Kenneth Paul Tan is a tenured associate professor at the National University of Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. In January 2021, he will be taking up a tenured professorship at the Hong Kong Baptist University, which means that Singapore will be losing one of its most prolific and insightful scholars writing on Singapore politics and culture. His books include Singapore, Identity, Brand, Power, and Governing Global Singapore, Legacies and Futures After Lee Kuan Yew. Kenneth, may I invite you to share your remarks?
Thank you, Ho Young. I agree with you very much that the term watershed is used very often and often very loosely to describe elections here in Singapore. And I want to suggest that the word or the term soul searching is used just as often. The PAP often claims to do a lot of this soul searching after elections, especially those elections where the results have not been so favorable. The PAP may even gesture at remaking or re-energizing the party, but it is in many respects incapable of reforming itself today. Being incumbent for as long as it has, the original paternalist authoritarianism of the post-colonial founding leaders, which was forged in heroic times, has become entrenched today in a much less heroic, less transformative, and certainly less inspiring technocracy. And has been entrenched in the form of an elite entitlement, defensive mindset, prickly personality, and a dogmatic ideology that still dares to call itself pragmatic. Energies seem often directed most at defending orthodoxy, not as much against heretical ideas as those who hold them and dare to present them. They are, to be sure, PAP MPs who represent diversity within the party. And I'm not talking about the ones who present themselves as arising from humble backgrounds to achieve successful careers, which is a very dominant motif used to justify or support the ideology of meritocracy. I'm actually referring to the ones in the party who seem out of the box, who seem to have a more progressive outlook. But I think that their inclusion, if this is not simply a basic attempt at co-optation, may be little more than a display to simulate diversity, to simulate inclusiveness, and maybe win over some electoral support at the margins. Now, these MPs themselves perhaps make their own calculation to pursue their relatively more progressive agendas, but are mostly aware of the limitations that curtail their full policy and political ambitions. They have to contend with glass ceilings and an intricate web of OB markers. And these OB markers, you have to navigate them in order to survive and to create whatever impact they can within the hard-lined PAP. What I think we will see more of alongside what's looking more obvious, which is the elite fragmentation and elite fracture, which we saw quite a lot of in GE 2020, is what I want to call elite implosion. The PAP in government has become decadent. And this is how I want to think of it. And I don't mean decadent in the sense of moral depravity, not that sort of decadence, but decadence in the way that it has reached zenith of its achievements. And these are considerable achievements. But there, at the pinnacle of their accomplishment, they find themselves utterly exhausted. Rapid growth and development, the sorts of things that constitute the spectacle of the Singapore story, these have become exhausting, right? And they've become frustrating even. And the old theory of Singapore's survival and success seems to have run its course. And this exhaustion points, above all, I think, to an absence of originality, of new and exciting ideas, the absence of which mean that it's very difficult to galvanize and to motivate Singaporeans for the future. So the PAP government seems instead to be self-referentially tethered to its own history and the success formulas that that history narrates ad nauseum. So in this regard, today's PAP government has been infantilized by the giants of its own past. Diversity from outside and even marginally from inside, which could be a potential source of dynamization and re-energization, I think are continually misrecognized and mischaracterized by the PAP hardliners as opponents or potential opponents. And they spend so much of their energies trying to discredit them, to fix their opponents. I suspect GE 2020 will unleash a lot more fixing of this kind. And it will be done in a politics of ever more sophisticated bullying. So, you know, I look at elections and suddenly GE 2020, not as the cause of change, certainly not the cause of change in political change in Singapore, but I see them as a reflection of the state of decline, a decline of a larger system, and the PAP at the heart of this system. Maybe I'll stop there.